Hey Cowboys Nation, let's go for another round of news from America's team. Watch until the end so you don't miss any news and sign up to stay tuned for everything that comes out about the Cowboys.
Emmitt Smith blasts Cowboys for embarrassing playoff meltdown. The Dallas Cowboys were one of the best teams in the NFL this season, cruising to a 12-5 record and winning the NFC East. However, in the NFL playoffs, Cowboys head coach Mike McCarthy, quarterback Dak Prescott, and the rest of the team choked in a 48-32 loss to the Green Bay Packers. That happened nearly a month ago at this point, but Cowboys legend and three-time Super Bowl champ Emmitt Smith is still not happy about it. The success of the Dallas Cowboys is to give you the illusion we're going to be very good, but we're really not as good as we think we are. Because when you have moments like this of complete meltdown in the playoffs, it is unacceptable, Smith told the hosts of Good Morning Football on NFL Network. It is embarrassing to the organization and to all of the Cowboys Nation fans. So to me this right here just is not a good look. It wasn't a great game. We didn't perform to what we're capable of, and the star looks a little tainted right now because these boys were doing whatever the heck they wanted to do against us. It's embarrassing. Emmitt Smith went so far as to say that, in his opinion, the Cowboys' playoff collapse was worse than 1-15, referring to the franchise's brutal 1-15 1989 season. The only positive thing about that losing campaign was that it allowed Jerry Jones to draft a certain Florida Gators running back the next offseason, and 3 Super Bowl wins in the next 6 seasons followed. Cowboys hire former Vikings head coach as new defensive coordinator. The Dallas Cowboys took a trip down memory lane on Thursday, February 8th, hiring former Minnesota Vikings head coach Mike Zimmer to run their defense for a second time in his NFL career. Tom Pelissero of NFL Network first reported the news via social media on Thursday night. The Cowboys are expected to hire Mike Zimmer as their defensive coordinator, per sources, Pelissero wrote. Zimmer, 67, is the third winningest coach in Vikings history and long respected for his defensive prowess. A big hire for Dallas, where Zimmer previously coached from 1994 to 2006. Zimmer takes over for former Cowboys defensive coordinator Dan Quinn, who left Dallas following the team's disappointing playoff loss to the Green Bay Packers in January to assume the head coaching position with the Washington Commanders. Mike Zimmer spent more than 2 decades as DC or HC in NFL, including 6-year stint as Cowboys coordinator. Zimmer spent 8 years leading the Vikings between 2014 to 21. The team earned a regular season record of 7-5-6-1 over that span and made the playoffs 3 times, earning a postseason mark of 2-3, per Pro Football Reference. Zimmer ran the Cowboys' defense for years between 2000 to 06, then held the same job with the Atlanta Falcons in 2007 and the Cincinnati Bengals from 2008 to 13 before joining the Vikings. Minnesota fired Zimmer and general manager Rick Spielman following an 8-9 regular season campaign in 2021. The Vikings hired general manager Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah and head coach Kevin O'Connell as replacements, who led the franchise to an NFC North Division title in 2022 but struggled to a 7-10 record last season after QB Kirk Cousins suffered an Achilles rupture roughly halfway through the campaign. Zimmer has been out of the NFL for the past 2 seasons, though he hasn't been out of football. Deion Sanders hired Zimmer as an analyst at Jackson State in 2022, where the former Cowboys cornerback and 2011 Hall of Fame inductee was serving as head coach at the time. Mike Zimmer left Vikings organization on strange terms. Zimmer left Minnesota as one of the most successful coaches in franchise history, but the descent toward his departure was lined by awkwardness that occasionally bordered on the bizarre. A former player criticized Zimmer for promoting his son to co-defensive coordinator in 2019, accusing the coach of nepotism. In December 2022, a deep dive by ESPN's Tim Keown into the new Vikings culture under O'Connell revealed that star wide receiver Justin Jefferson had never visited Zimmer's office during 2 years together in Minnesota. Zimmer also offered players an off-putting speech late in his final season at the helm. After a key loss in the final weeks of the season, Zimmer's tone started to shift, Ben Gosling of the Star Tribune reported in January 2022. Sources said the coach gave a presentation about all the bad things that happened to him in his 8 years with the Vikings. Adrian Peterson's suspension in 2014, Teddy Bridgewater's knee injury in 2016, and so on, leaving players dumbfounded. Not soon after, Minnesota dismissed Zimmer, as the relationship had clearly run its course. The former Vikings coach now finds himself back in a prominent role on arguably the most famous team in the NFL, with an opportunity to write a new chapter in his long career in professional football. Cowboys could make surprise $12.4 million move on disappointing star, PFF. This was not the season it was supposed to be for the Cowboys' Tony Pollard, not with the departure of star running back Ezekiel Elliott and the handing over of the keys to the running game that came with it. Pollard logged 1,005 yards, which was good for 12th in the NFL and only 2 yards off last year's total, 1,007, but he did so on 252 carries. His average of 4.0 yards per carry was well off last year's mark, 5.2 yards per rush. That has led to speculation that Pollard's time in Dallas is running short. He is a free agent this offseason, after playing last year on a franchise tag, a one-year deal based on a formula that comes from the league, at $10.1 million. He was one of just 8 running backs, per overthecap.com, who made 8-figure salaries last year. The expectation is that the franchise tag was a one-year test period, and because it did not go particularly well, the Cowboys will let Pollard walk this offseason. But Pro Football Focus sees a potentially different outcome for Pollard, another franchise tag. Cowboys' Tony Pollard has $6.5 million, $8 million market value. The Cowboys could ink Pollard to a second franchise tag deal, though it would be the final time they could do that before having to sign him to a contract. Overthecap.com projects that number to be $12.4 million, and Spotrac has it slightly less, at $11.3 million. Considering the fact that Spotrac pegs Pollard's market value at $6.5 million per year, and PFF has his projected contract, if he is not franchised at 3 years and $24 million, or $8 million per year, then putting the franchise tag on him this season amounts to agreeing to overpay him by $3 million, $6 million. Here's how PFF sees the justification for tagging Pollard and keeping him in Dallas, in an article that looked at potential franchise tag candidates this offseason. For each team, the Cowboys franchised Pollard during the 2023 offseason, and his production did not match the price. Pollard appeared in all 17 games, but he saw his yards per rush drop down to 4.0. Tagging him again would be pricey for the Cowboys, but there is a chance he could be better in 2024 after being a full year removed from his leg injury during the 2022 playoffs. Leg injury was a factor, or not? Pollard did admit that the leg injury bothered him in the early part of the season. "I would say it's a night and day difference," Pollard said in December, per C.com. "You think you're good. You think you're all the way back until you're actually out there making plays, full speed, feeling it. Once you get a feel for it and get your feet under you, then you start to realize, oh, so I may have lost a little right there. But I'm picking it back up." But Pollard's second-half season numbers in Dallas were not much different than his first-half numbers, and in the playoff loss to Green Bay, he had just 56 yards on 15 carries. So, did he really pick much back up? The Cowboys have some expensive free agents and extensions to deal with this offseason, and though bringing back Pollard is not out of the question, another franchise tag would be more money than he's worth. There's value in having to only give a one-year commitment, but it's still giving away money for a team.